now for Money, Power, Politics. Today, you saw it right there. The CEO of Japanese investment company SoftBank was at Mar-a-Lago making a multi-billion-dollar pledge to the United States. But as Axios points out, quote, this is a change in PR strategy more than a change in investment strategy. For more, let's bring in Jeff Stein, White House economics reporter for The Washington Post, and Max Chapkin, Bloomberg Businessweek journalist and co-host of the Elon Inc. podcast. Jeff, we've actually seen this before in 2016, SoftBank. And if people are going, SoftBank, weren't they the guys that lost like $1 zillion investing in WeWork? The answer is yes, but they still have $1 zillion more. But back in 2016, this same guy promised to invest $50 billion to create 50,000 jobs. I can't remember any ribbon cutting. How did that go?
I mean, we can look at what SoftBank had to invest last year. And my understanding from Forbes reporting is that they only had about $300 million with an M dollars in investment, which was a 90% decline from the prior year. So to answer your question directly, we don't know exactly, as far as I can tell, how many jobs were created, what this actually yielded. As a Trump reporter in the first administration, Trump did this constantly, holding big events where he said this company or that company, Foxconn and Carrier, would invest millions or billions of dollars and create hundreds or thousands of jobs. And those investments often did not materialize. Obviously, it's too soon to say, and I talked to some investors who say it's possible that SoftBank does raise a substantial sum of money to make major investments. Whether that will be $100 billion or even $200 billion, I mean, the clip you played seems to suggest that Trump almost recognizes that this is kind of a joke. $100 billion, $200 billion, whatever you want. And that seems to kind of underscore the make-believe nature of this. Not to say that nothing will happen, but that the headline numbers here are just for the press release.
I mean, it might. Listen, SoftBank is a huge investor. They've got dry powder. But, Max, it does remind me of Foxconn, right? Foxconn said they were going to invest $10 billion and build this massive factory in Wisconsin, create 13,000 jobs. It never, ever, ever happened. Not like they started it and couldn't fit. Didn't happen.
I think they got a few jobs, but definitely well short of that goal by like a factor of 10.
There was no plant built.
Yeah, they've built a handful of buildings, but yeah, it's way short. I would say that compared to that, this feels less concrete. I mean, that you actually had a site, you had funding from the state of Wisconsin, you actually had quite a lot of momentum. Here, it really felt like Jeff is saying, as this is just sort of concepts of a plan, we're just sort of coming up with some ideas that might be useful to attract some investors and could maybe lead to, something down the road. The other thing I'll say is these jobs that Masa Son is talking about are not big job-creating jobs. Like, these are tech companies. They employ a few engineers. These are not big manufacturing operations. And, that's kind of the whole thing with AI, right? It's not necessarily a job-creating technology. So it's sort of hard to understand what he's even talking about.
But let's think about sort of attracting investment dollars, because last week, Jeff, Donald Trump promised fully expedited approvals and permits for any company looking to invest $1 billion plus in the United States. Does that factor in? Because you could talk to companies big and small across this country, and they will tell you, whether it's right or wrong, permitting is their number one roadblock.
Yeah, and as you're saying, Stephanie, there is huge bipartisan interest. I mean, Democrats have been expressing a desire to do something about permitting reform, and we understand that Musk and Ramaswamy at the DoGE Commission, still feels weird to say that as a serious matter, but that the DoGE Commission is interested in these kinds of things. That said, I mean, there are still federal laws on the books that regulate big projects, and as Max is saying, there's just, we don't know what giving a expedited process for projects north of $1 billion will be. I will say that I think one really crucial thing that this shows, I mean, Trump himself said at the news conference that, quote, in his first term, everyone was fighting me. In this term, everyone wants to work with me, or something to that effect. And that, I think, is really the true signal here. What you're seeing is between, the permitting and this and many other announcements, and Bezos going down there and Mark Zuckerberg donating, you are seeing a complete collapse, really, of any corporate America resistance to Trump. All the fears that characterize and all the fights that characterize much of his first term with corporate America, those have dissipated. And that, it is a really striking trend. And I think suggests that Trump will have fewer guardrails, at least in this aspect this time around.
It's a striking trend. It's a massive difference. Max, think back to Donald Trump's first term, right? Jeff Bezos is going this way. I mean, CEO after CEO are going. And I get the argument they're making. They're pragmatists. They've got a business to run. They know how Donald Trump operates. But when you think back to 2016, he did not get a strong showing at the inauguration from the business community. Think after that, when he created all those CEO commissions, those business groups, people were stressed out whether or not they even wanted to join or participate or be seen with the guy. And now they're cartwheeling into Mar-a-Lago. What changed between then and now?
Well,
because Donald Trump didn't change.
What changes is they're doing it in public. So back then, Bezos and these other CEOs were lobbying Trump, and they were kind of doing some of these same things. They were going to Trump Tower, and you had these photo hops, and then the cameras would go away, and they would sometimes say nice things about Trump or express optimism because that's what business leaders do. On the other hand, they were really worried about their customers, about the Democrats, about the cost of this.
About their employees.
And that is what feels like it's changed, to Jeff's point. A lot of this is happening out of the open. Just a few months ago, Mark Zuckerberg was talking about we're going to have a neutral platform, and here Facebook is donating, $1 million to the inauguration. It really feels like something has shifted, and they're not as worried about the blowback as they once were.
Jeff, you're reporting that Donald Trump is considering privatizing the Postal Service. Today, he said it's not the worst idea, and they're looking at it. This kind of seems like a classic sort of Trump playbook of like, look, the government doesn't work, and they show you that it's broken, and they say, no, you know what we're going to do? We're going to bring business guys in to privatize it, which doesn't mean that it's going to work, but it means someone's going to make a whole lot of money.
I mean, just to focus in on what we're talking about here, Trump, I've been told by sources who have, been briefed on, private conversations at Mar-a-Lago, Trump is really exercised about the fact that the Postal Service lost about $10 billion last year. $10 billion is a lot of money by any standard, but it is not a particularly meaningful amount of the federal budget. The Trump administration is looking to extend without pay-fors about 5, maybe 6, 7, depending on what you include, $1 trillion worth of tax cuts. And we are on the precipice of a major fight in Washington over privatizing the Postal Service because, in part it is required by Congress, by law, to do unprofitable deliveries to make sure that people in far-flung and rural areas can get their mail. And that is now at risk, even as we're sort of moving towards an agenda where trillions and trillions of dollars that will not be paid for get sped through. And as you're saying, we don't know who could be the private beneficiary of that. My colleague reported that Elon Musk, put about $277 million toward the campaign. I just want to check this figure. He is now about $200 billion richer. So the opportunity to use the federal government to create profits for private businessmen who are close to Trump are immense right now, and the Postal Service might just be one manifestation of that.
You just dropped some serious smart stuff, you little smarty pants. He invested $275 million. He's up $270 billion. But I just want to say to our audience one more time why this is so important. Yes, the U.S. Postal Service lost $10 billion last year, in part because they guarantee that they are going to deliver mail to rural areas that are really hard to get to, that obviously are a money loser for them. But it's a commitment from the government, because the government doesn't view itself as an entity to make money. And what they're potentially looking to do away from that are tax cuts that could cost $5 trillion with no plan yet how to pay for it.